We're gonna fight that?
We have no choice.
Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're taking on the 10 worst bosses in the God of War series. For a series known for its epic and climactic battles, you can't expect all of them to be at the same caliber all of the time. What was the worst God of War boss you faced down? Let us know down in the comments. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. Bridgekeeper, God of War 2018.
And there's the Keeper, making sure the dead are really dead.
The Troll is the first major encounter Kratos and Atreus face in 2018's God of War sequel/reboot, and from then on are a recurring sub-boss that present their own level of challenge as the story progresses. However, what we did not expect was essentially a copy-paste Troll encounter for one of the most important story moments during our trip to Helheim. The Bridgekeeper is more or less the same Troll we'd faced more than a handful of times up to this point, albeit with a new teleporting ability as well as a couple new attacks. While most likely the true boss battle was against the enormous bird whose true name I won't even attempt to pronounce here, but is also known as the Corpse Swallower, the Bridgekeeper feels like a budgetary or time constraint replacement that doesn't carry the same weight as facing down the Corpse Swallower. Pollux and Castor, God of War Ascension.
Place your offerings for Aletheia. We will decide if they're worthy at our will.
I offer nothing.
Worthy of note before we begin, if you demand Kratos make a sacrifice, be very specific because he won't make the one you're expecting. Considered the black sheep of the God of War series, Ascension doesn't make up for many of its shortcomings in the boss fight department either. In his quest to seek audience with the Oracle, Kratos must first get by Pollux and Castor, but despite an impressive setup, the fight never manages to be anything more than a nuisance. After a quick time event chase, Kratos faces down the pair in an arena in which they constantly teleport around before retreating to a series of pillars Kratos must destroy to bring them back down to ground level. Rinse and repeat until forcibly separating the two and make them the sacrifice they so desperately demanded. Theseus, God of War 2.
The ghost of Sparta.
You get what you deserve when you challenge the God of War to battle. Theseus' arrogance is no match for Kratos' rage, but even Kratos didn't have to try very hard to take his cousin down. From his slow attacks that can be easily dodged or countered, to the way he cowardly runs and hides at the top of the doorway before summoning minotaurs to do his fighting for him, Theseus is all bark and no bite. By the time Kratos pulls Theseus from his perch, both Kratos and the player are just annoyed and ready to move on. After yet another QuickTime event, Kratos closes the door on Theseus for good. Hermes, God of War 3.
Kratos, the ghost of Sparta, the fallen god, the cursed mortal.
To catch a fly from the ass of Zeus is not worth my time.
Alright, we're gonna speed through this one because it's what he would have wanted. Attempting to prove that the tongue is mightier than the sword, Hermes spends the good majority of this encounter talking a big game before spending the entire first half running from Kratos and continuing to taunt him every step of the way. By the time you finally catch up with Hermes, he's exhausted having run his mouth as much as his feet, and then it's simply a matter of catching the annoying pest as he uses his remaining energy to dart back and forth around the enclosed space. The fight is just so anticlimactic after having chased Hermes so far, and it amounts to Kratos simply snatching him as he attempts to flee and clipping his wings. Persian King, God of War Chains of Olympus.
Olympus has sent a message, and I am here to deliver it.
Then you are just a messenger.
As the first boss you encounter in Kratos' first handheld adventure, the Persian King doesn't leave a lasting impression for the game going forward. The fight itself is insanely straightforward. Avoid the sharp pointy end of his sword, and whittle down his health until dead. Beyond a couple elemental attacks that even damage his own soldiers, there's barely a threat here for the legendary Ghost of Sparta. His shield will block a majority of Kratos' attacks, and the Persian King seems to have a never-ending supply of henchmen, but he ends up doing just as much damage to them as Kratos does. The Persian King ends up begging for his life and offers Kratos all his riches, but Kratos generously declines and leaves the Persian King among his riches forever.
Take my kingdom, my women, my gold.
I won't take your riches, but I will take your life.
Scylla, God of War, Ghost of Sparta. Sometimes the anticipation and build-up to an encounter ends up being more impactful than the end result itself. Such is the case with Scylla. After the ship Kratos is traveling on becomes entangled by tentacles, the mind races imagining what creature could be behind such an attack. After dealing with the tentacles and washing ashore, Scylla makes its presence known and remains trapped among the rocks as it lashes at Kratos with its gross tummy tentacles. There's not really much of a threat here, as Scylla can't fully reach Kratos, and beyond sending its little parasites onto the beach, most of Scylla's attacks are easily dodgeable. After sending Scylla retreating back to the depths, Kratos encounters the beast once again later on, but this encounter is nothing more than a series of quick-time events that gives Scylla a whole new porthole. Dark Elf King, God of War 2018. As Kratos and Atreus journey through the realm of Elfheim, they are constantly accosted by the Dark Elves before their leader, the Dark Elf King, attempts to kidnap Atreus. Needless to say, this leaves an impression on both Kratos and the player, seeking revenge for this transgression. The build-up to this fight is palpable, knowing that you're going to be forced to face down the King of the Dark Elves before you can leave Alfheim behind. And then the moment comes, and he's nothing more than a stronger Dark Elf with a bigger health bar that has his name on it, that I once again won't attempt to butcher here. The Dark Elf King is most likely another victim of time constraints, as he feels like he was set up for a much more epic fight than what we ended up with. Helios, God of War 3.
Feel the power of the sun!
The battle with Helios ends almost as soon as it begins. After shooting Helios out of the sky, he's crushed and thrown against a mountainside by the Titan Perseus. And by the time Kratos finds his way to him, Helios is already essentially defeated. That doesn't stop Helios from prolonging the inevitable, however, as he summons Olympus Sentinels to protect him. This is probably the only boss fight in the entire series in which you don't actually fight the actual boss. After Kratos is unable to break through their shields, he commandeers a Cyclops to knock down the barricade and bring Helios out into the light. Helios' last line of defense is to attempt to blind Kratos with the power of the sun, but Kratos manages to snuff out the light and take the power of the sun in his hands. Dark Rider, God of War 2. The God of War series breaks with tradition for this boss fight and turns the battle into an on-rails shooter. On the back of a flaming Pegasus steed, Kratos journeys to the Island of Creation and is beset upon by the island's protectors riding on the backs of griffins. After disposing of the numerous minions in his way, Kratos faces down the leader of the Griffin Riders, the Dark Rider himself. After exchanging blows, Kratos takes the fight to the Dark Rider's Griffin to battle face to face, and after a series of quick-time events, the, quote, fight is over. Despite the epic nature of these encounters, as well as the Pegasus's loyalty to catch Kratos every time he leaps from its back, the fight itself doesn't provide any reward until much later on when Kratos can recover the Spear of Destiny in the lowlands. Icarus, God of War 2.
Go back, warrior. There is no passage here. You will never make it across. You think you can, but you cannot.
To call this entry a boss fight does a disservice to all the other so-called boss fights that came before it on this list, but the God of War wiki has Icarus listed as a boss fight, so who are we to argue? In Greek mythology, Icarus loses his wings by flying too close to the sun. In God of War 2, Icarus loses his wings by flying too close to Kratos. After standing between Kratos and the Sisters of Fate, Icarus attacks Kratos, sending them both tumbling down an endless chasm. During the ensuing fight, if that's what we're gonna call it, the player follows a series of button prompts and quicktime events to relieve Icarus of his wings, as Icarus reconsiders his position of standing in Kratos' way. Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from MojoPlays, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.